Hi guys, let's talk about Trazelle and Jacqueline West's defense attorney's press conference. If I am standing trial for murder, I want the most well-spoken representation possible. I want somebody who just reeks of confidence. The male attorney that did most of the talking didn't even seem like he was confident in what he was saying. Like, he couldn't even convince himself, let alone the general public. Did you guys feel the same way? And at the time that he was describing, and he did a good job distinguishing the difference between the duties of the grand jury versus a jury of your peers. He did do a good job distinguishing those. But when it came to talking about the media and what he felt was the pre-described notion among the public that his clients were guilty, I almost felt like he was whining about it. Like, well, then, we've already lost if this is going to be the situation, unless we get a gag order, unless we get a change of venue. Now, let's go back to the grand jury indictment. So he seemed really annoyed that the state had gone that route. He was like, well, yes, it's an option. They had that option. And then he outlined the reasons he thought that option was somewhat problematic. And, that in his opinion, and I'm not sure, from a legal standpoint, but, he kind of pointed out that it doesn't require as much damning evidence on the part of the state to get that indictment. And I'm paraphrasing this, okay? These are not his words by any means, but this is what I took away from it, was basically that the state doesn't have as much of a duty to present the case in an unbiased way, to present the evidence for and against the possibility of guilt for these people. Now, of course, when you get to a jury trial, that's going to play out very different, because one thing that the jury trial has to come up with that the grand jury does not is reasonable doubt. If there is reasonable doubt, then a jury of your peers should not convict you. And that isn't necessary in the grand jury. So he did seem kind of, upset or annoyed that they went the route of the grand jury. Now remember, what we heard when the state did their press conference was that there had been a lot of witnesses that had come and spoke to the grand jury that they felt, if it hadn't been done in secrecy, because grand jury is always secret, that these witnesses may face threats from the defendants. And that is why, or one of the main reasons, that the state decided to go this route. Now, I want to say this. I want to say that I personally think that the Wests are guilty. And I think that most of us, and this is, where the defense attorneys are going with this, we do have set in our heads that they are guilty. And I think that most of us felt that way right from the beginning. Their story just didn't jive. I mean, it was, seemed kind of improbable. It was, riddled with not only inconsistencies, but just an overall lack of emotion from these people who are supposed to be the adopted parents of young little boys. There was just a coldness, and it sounded robotic. I was cutting wood, she was wrapping presents. It was cold. I mean, it was the weirdest interview I have ever watched. So given that I already think that they're guilty, so I guess I can give the defense attorneys that, that is probably an assumption that a lot of us have. I'm going to go into this trial and I'm probably going to walk in there with an assumption of guilt. Right or wrong, that's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that if you have some bombshell information, if you have some information that can convince me that I'm wrong, that I wouldn't be absolutely willing to hear it, to assess it in my own head, and come to a different conclusion if your evidence was strong enough. Because I want justice for these little boys, just like everybody else does. I don't want the wrong person to go to prison, because if that happens, there's no justice. That would mean that whoever hurt them is still out on the loose. And not only is that no justice for them, but then there's a potential psychopath still running around loose. So no, I am not like, running with my torch, just saying, convict them. I absolutely want the right person to be held accountable. And we've talked about this many times in the Summer Wells case. Doesn't matter to me what I think about Dawn Wells, doesn't matter what I think about Candace, doesn't matter what I think about any of the parties that have played a role in the story. I want the right person held accountable at the end of the day. And I know that you guys do too. So with all that said, I did not get a good feeling from these attorneys. And honestly, I want them to have the best counsel possible, because if they are guilty, I want that, indictment and that conviction and that prison sentence to be a result of a trial that was won on evidence, and not one that was won because they had weak counsel. Number one, that's just not the way I would want it to go down. But more importantly, number two, that leaves doors open later on for appeals and all kinds of other things. So come on. These people they're gonna have to amp up a little bit before court in May, is my opinion. Tell me what you think about it. Now I'm gonna get real petty. Petty Betty right here. So they had an interpreter, and she was interpreting in Spanish. And I believe that that's because Jacqueline's family, some of them only speak Spanish. That is what I heard. I don't know if that's accurate, but regardless, there was a Spanish-speaking interpreter. And this is so ridiculous, and why it rubbed me the wrong way, I have no idea. So when the attorney was whining, saying that he felt like his clients are already being tried in the media. He just said the word media, okay? He didn't say any specific kind of media. So on comes the interpreter, and, she's reciting what he's saying. I don't speak Spanish, but what I did get out of it is she did say media, and then she specifically said YouTube. And I thought, who are you? You're the interpreter. Your job is to interpret exactly what is being said in that press conference, not to add your own, thoughts or feelings on the case. If you think that people on YouTube are, making it more difficult for the Wests to have a fair trial, then that's something that the attorney should say verbatim, not you. Now, maybe they had practiced this previously and he just forgot to say YouTube. So, she said it because she had already practiced it that way. I don't know. Do interpreters practice ahead of time, or do they just come on up and, start repeating what's being said? Whether you are interpreting for the hearing impaired or for a different language, I would assume that your job is to say exactly what is being said, unless in that language that you're now using, they don't have the exact phrase or the exact word that would match, then you would, I would think, find a word or phrase that would be as close to the meaning without changing it as possible. But if he says media and then you say media YouTube, then I have a problem with that. Sounds to me like that's your opinion. And certainly on YouTube, people are given their opinions and their commentaries on all kinds of cases. And I don't think that I, or even the really big YouTubers with, massive amounts of followers, hold that kind of weight that we're going to change the outcome of that trial. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get into that courtroom and all the evidence is going to be presented by both sides. And it's going to have absolutely nothing to do with anything that I am saying or any other YouTuber is saying. So those are some of my thoughts on this press conference. Let me know what you think. You think they did a fantastic job? You think that they were kind of weak in presenting their concerns? And do you think that I am the most petty person in the entire world that I was annoyed with the interpreter? Or you think that, that's a good point. It might be small and kind of insignificant, but it's a good point. What are you doing? Why are you adding stuff? So that's it. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.